I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. In today's vlog, I'm going to talk a little bit about getting good photos of your work. If you just need photos for your website, social media, that sort of thing for online purposes, you really can use any camera, any digital or even your cell phone will probably be okay for you. When you get to the point though where you want to start making prints, you really want a much better camera than that. I strongly recommend investing in a DSLR. One of the things that you want to keep in mind, and there's this really big misconception that it's about the megapixels. That's how good of a print you can make or how big of a print you can make. Megapixels are really a small part of this. There's just so much more involved than just the megapixels. I am not a photographer, I am not an expert on the subject, but this is what I can tell you. I had talked to others who were experts when I needed to upgrade my camera to something that I could get quality photos for prints. I had a regular Nikon digital camera, and while it took okay photos, it wasn't terrible. As far as actually getting good shots of my artwork, it just wasn't doing it. If I blew them up, they were grainy, there was a lot of noise in the photo, they just weren't ever quite right. So I saved up and I ended up getting a Nikon. I have a Nikon D3100, something like that. I do not have top of the line. You don't have to have the best. Canon and Nikon, you're pretty much safe. But the lens in the DSLR, the things that it's able to capture, it's so much more accurate to my actual paintings. And if you are going to go and hire a professional to take photos, it's a lot of money. Years ago when I looked into having this done myself, they wanted something like $500 per photo, and that wasn't counting the prints themselves. That was just counting getting a good enough photograph of the painting to use. Like, the painting's not even worth that much. And that's going to vary depending on who you go to. But the point is, it will really get expensive if you're having to pay somebody to do this. So it is a very good idea to save up and get yourself a DSLR. The one that I got, I think I spent $500 or $600, and it came with 2 lenses, and it's perfect for taking photos of my work. It's also really good for taking reference photos. I have gotten the most gorgeous photos out of this, and again, not a photographer. I don't know how to use the camera. I just put it on auto, and it's amazing the photos that I've gotten from this thing that a regular digital camera just would not have captured. And if you're using it for your art business, it's tax deductible, so that's pretty handy. If you're doing smaller works like 8x10 or right around there, even into twice that size, you can scan them, and worst case, if it's bigger than the scanner, you can scan it in 2 pieces and knit them together in Photoshop. If it's not too big, that's not a lot of work to do. It was an entire day's worth of work to scan each piece and then knit them all together. It was just so much work. So it's not the best plan for your bigger pieces, but for smaller things, that does work. Personally, I prefer the results that I get from taking photos even of my smaller pieces with the DSLR, but the scanning is an option, and that will give you high enough quality to print if you are working small. If getting a DSLR is just not even an option anytime in the near future for you, talk to your friends. Chances are one of them or one of their parents or somebody you know probably has one, and usually people are pretty cool about you bringing your artwork over to their house and just having them get the photographs for you. So that's also a really good option if you don't have one on your own. Okay, now for the actual tips. You've got your camera, whichever camera you decide to go with. Lighting. You can get a whole big setup with all the fancy lighting, but what usually works best is just natural, indirect sunlight. You do not want a flash. Never, 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 never use a flash when you're taking photographs of your work. Ever. I cannot stress this enough. You really don't want to use a flash for anything unless you're taking photos of you and your friends at night, but if you're taking a photo of something you want to paint or draw, you don't want to flash that. Flashes and art just don't mix together well. Once you've found a good spot, for me, I have the office in this house is just absolutely perfect. The lighting in the early morning, it's indirect enough. I'm not getting too bad of a glare on my darks. So for me, that's always the room that I use. But you may have to try a different room. It may work for you to take it outside, but you're going to need to be in the shade. You normally aren't going to want to be in direct sunlight to get a good shot of your painting. You want to line the camera up with the painting. Make sure that the lens is right in the middle of the painting. You don't want to be coming up at an angle or looking down on it or at all at an angle, because it will actually warp the photograph. You can crop it so the edges are squared, but it still warps the actual painting. It may be minor, but it is something that you want to watch for. So make sure you line that camera up directly, completely centered with that image. And you can see I'm using mine on a tripod. If you're taking the photos by holding the camera, they'll be good enough for the internet, but for prints, you really do want to use a tripod. You're going to get way better results. And even if you're using a regular digital camera, set it on something. If you don't have a tripod, I've taken TV trays and stacked books on them before I had a tripod. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can do this, but you want a stable surface to set that camera on, because you will get that slight blur that you don't notice when you look at the photo in the camera, but when you blow it up to print size, it's pretty obvious. So definitely either use a tripod or make one. But they're pretty handy because with the actual tripod, you can adjust depending on the height of your painting and where it's setting and all that fun stuff. Just make sure when you set that up that the camera's not slightly this way and the image is tilted back or any, you know, don't have one tilted one way or another. Make sure that they are both at the exact same angle. Ideally 90 degree and 90 degree, but if this one's tilted a little, this one has, the camera has to tilt to match that. So just make sure they're the exact same. That is it for my tips on taking photographs of your work. Next week we're going to talk a little bit about how to get prints made of your work. If you're new here, I have video critiques every Tuesday where I'm critiquing your original paintings or drawings, my own speed paintings, drawings, and tutorials every Wednesday, and vlogs every week. And follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, all those social media sites. Links are below in the video description. You can keep up with news, my newest work, and see real-time clips of whatever it is that I am currently working on. I'll see you Tuesday.